Dealers were quietly warning customers not to open the throttle. It was not because of a recall, it was because people were dying. These are those bikes. The Widowmaker's H1 Mach 3, the original Widowmaker. 500 cubic centimeters two-stroke triple with a chassis, built for half the power. The front wheel would lift without warning and the frame flexed at speed. H1B, the second year, Kawasaki added a front disc brake and changed almost nothing else. The power band was identical, so was the casualty rate. H1D, the 1972 revision, minor suspension tweaks, same lethal power band. Dealers across the US were still telling customers to avoid door at full throttle. Most customers ignored them. H1F, the final H1. By this point, Kawasaki knew the design was fundamentally dangerous. They sold it for 6 years anyway. H2 Mach 4, the H1's bigger, angrier brother. 750 cubic centimeters in the same flexing frame, more displacement, same marginal brakes, and a tank slap at speed that was almost impossible to correct once it started. H2A, the first revision, new indicators, same problem. At full throttle in second gear, the front wheel came up and landed crooked. Riders who had not experienced this had no time to learn. H2B, 1974. The power was now 74 horsepower. The front drum brake was still the same unit. The gap between what the engine demanded and what the brakes could manage had not closed. H2C, the last of the 750 triples. Emission controls started strangling the power, which, for once, was a feature rather than a problem. S1 Mach 2, the 250 cubic centimeters entry point into two-stroke insanity. Younger riders bought these thinking the smaller displacement meant smaller risk. The power band did not care about their assumption. S2 Mach 3, 350 cubic centimeters triple. The middle child of the two-stroke lineup, not small enough to feel manageable, not powerful enough to demand full respect. Riders treated it casually, it punished that. S3, the 400 cubic centimeters version, more torque than the S2, same all-or-nothing delivery. The last of the mid-displacement triples before emissions regulations ended the experiment, KH250. The budget two-stroke. Stripped down, cheaper to buy, identical character. It reached a generation of riders who could not afford the full-size machines, and found out why those machines had a reputation. KH400, the last street legal triple two-stroke. Kawasaki knew the era was over. They shipped it anyway because nothing else in its class made this kind of noise or hit this hard below $1,000. KH500, the H1 engine in a slightly revised chassis. Less chrome, same chaos, sold in markets where the original H1 had already earned its nickname. The Superbike era, Z1. The machine that rewrote what a production motorcycle could be. 903 cubic centimeters, 82 horsepower, twin drum brakes on the front, and a top speed those drums had no realistic chance of managing. Z1A, minor updates, the brakes were still drums. The speed was still there, the stopping distance was still measured in things you had not hit yet. Z1B, 1975, front disc added, a genuine improvement and still not enough for the speeds the engine could reach. KZ's 900, the export version of the Z1 family. Same engine, different badging, same braking deficit against the power on offer. KZ 1000, more displacement, same era. Police departments bought these for high-speed pursuits, which tells you everything about how fast they were, and nothing reassuring about how they stopped. KZ 1000 Mach 2, the sporting revision. More aggressive tuning, sharper chassis. Riders who bought it for track days found out quickly where the limits were. KZ 1000 Police. In full spec with radio and equipment, it weighed over 270 kilograms, at pursuit speeds that mass had its own agenda. KZ 300. 6 cylinders, 1,286 cubic centimeters shaft drive. The largest displacement production motorcycle of its era. It weighed 296 kilograms and made enough torque to overwhelm the tyres without warning at low speed. Z1000H Turbo. Kawasaki bolted a turbocharger onto the Z1000 with zero electronic management. The boost arrived mid-corner as a sudden violent surge. The rear tyre was already loaded and had nowhere to go. Z750 Turbo, the smaller turbocharged Kawasaki. Same problem as the Z1000 Turbo in a lighter chassis, which made the power surge feel sharper. It crashed in large numbers within the first year. GPZ900R, the original Ninja. 115 horsepower in 1984, an aerodynamic fairing built for speed, no traction control, no ABS. It held the production motorcycle top speed record. It also had a casualty list, GPZ1000RX, the GPZ900R successor. More power, same era electronics. Fast enough that the margin for error at full throttle was essentially zero. ZX10. Not the modern Superbike, the 1988 version. 997 cubic centimeters, 125 horsepower, a chassis that was already at its limit when the engine was new. It aged badly, and riders who bought them second-hand paid for it. Race replicas. ZXR750, a homologation special in road-legal clothing. Race ergonomics, race power, road tyres and road brakes. The gap between what it looked like it could do and what it could actually stop from doing was the danger. ZXR750R, the full race spec version, close ratio gearbox, stiffer suspension, even less tolerance for rider error, sold with number plates attached and built for the serious rider. ZX7R, built to qualify for World Superbike. Peak power only arrived at the top of the rev range. Below 7,000 revolutions per minute, it felt tame. Above it, the bike had different plans than the rider. ZX7RR, the homologation special for the 7R. Even more aggressive cam timing, closer ratios, less compromise. Track-focused performance in a bike with an MOT certificate, ZX9R, built specifically to beat the CBR 900RR in a straight fight. Kawasaki succeeded. The Honda had been designed to be accessible. The Kawasaki had been designed to win a comparison test. Different priorities. ZX6R. A 17,000 revolutions per minute screamer with power that lived entirely in the top of the rev range. Track day statistics across multiple countries show the 600 Supersport class producing more serious incidents per rider than the Liter class. This is why. ZX6RR. The track-focused version of the ZX6R, less street equipment, more aggression, and sold to riders who thought the standard model was not exciting enough. ZXR400. 400 cubic centimeters of high-revving race replica for the Japanese domestic market. At 11,000 revolutions per minute, it felt like a completely different machine than it did in traffic. Learner riders bought these because the displacement sounded sensible. Liter class, ZX10R 2004, the first generation. 175 horsepower, virtually no electronic aids, and a reputation in the motorcycle press as the most demanding Liter bike of its year, and not as a compliment. ZX10R 2006. The revision that fixed the chassis but not the electronics situation. Still faster than almost anything else on the road, still relying on the rider to sort out the consequences. ZX10R 2011. The generation that started adding traction control. The fact that traction control was considered necessary tells you what the previous versions had been asking of their riders. ZX10R 2016. Full electronic suite, cornering ABS, multiple traction control modes, launch control. Every system exists to prevent outcomes the engine is capable of producing. Disable them and you understand why they are there. Electronics make the difference. ZX10RR, the homologation special. Hand-selected components, titanium valves, closer tolerances. Built to win the World Superbike Championship. Sold to the public because the rules required it. Homologation matters. ZX12R. Kawasaki and Suzuki entered a top-speed war neither could win cleanly. The ZX12R would exceed 300 km per hour without an electronic limiter. Governments threatened to legislate. Both manufacturers agreed to cap their machines rather than face a ban. Top speed concerns ruled. ZX14R. 208 horsepower from the factory. Quarter mile in under 9 seconds. A top speed the limiter prevents the bike from reaching. At these numbers, the road surface, the tyre contact patch, and the rider's reaction time are all failing before the engine does. Power was outrunning control. ZX14 R SE. Special edition with Brembo brakes and Olin suspension. Better stopping, better cornering, and the same 208 horsepower underneath it all. Special equipment improved control, but not the raw numbers. ZZ100. Before the ZX12R existed, this was the answer to the question of how fast a production motorcycle needed to be. It held the world's fastest production motorcycle title for nearly a decade. Nobody involved in building it thought that was a problem. Fastest was the badge they wore. ZZ1200, the ZR1100 replacement. Larger engine, refined chassis, and a legacy that meant riders buying it already had expectations the bike was fully capable of meeting. Motocross and off-road, KX500, the most powerful two-stroke motocross bike ever produced. 500 cubic centimeters of raw, violent power with no electronic management, and a chassis designed for a professional racer. Kawasaki sold it to the general public for 18 years. KX500, 1986. That year, the power output jumped significantly. Kawasaki's own race team reported the updated engine was difficult to manage even for experienced professionals. KX250, the 250 cubic centimeter two-stroke that produced more power per cubic centimeter than the KX500, an extremely narrow power band that either did nothing or everything, with almost nothing between those two states. KX125, the entry point to the KX line. Bought by young riders, often ridden without adequate protective equipment on terrain that punished mistakes immediately. KDX200, an enduro machine with the heart of a motocross bike, sold as a trail bike. Capable of speeds and power delivery that trail riders rarely expected until they were already dealing with it. KLX650R, a competition enduro machine with road registration. Fast enough on tarmac to embarrass sports bikes on a mountain road, and completely uncompromising about rider inputs. Z1000 2003, the first modern Z1000, 125 horsepower, sharp steering, no fairing to cushion the sensation of speed. Urban riding on this machine required constant attention. Z1000 2010. More power, more aggressive geometry, a chassis that rewarded commitment. Riders who were not committed found out what the alternative felt like. Z1000 CX, a touring fairing on a Z1000 engine. It looked more civilized than the naked version. The engine had not been informed of this. Z800, 800 cubic centimeters of inline 4 in a compact naked chassis. A mid-weight that felt like a litre bike to anyone coming from smaller machines, because in many ways it was. Z900, 125 horsepower, lightweight chassis, a throttle response sharp enough to catch riders off guard in slow-speed urban situations. Kawasaki's answer to the question of what a naked bike needed to be in 2017. Z900 RS, a retro-styled Z900. The cafe racer aesthetic attracted riders who associated the look with slower, vintage machines. The engine had no interest in the aesthetic. ZH2, 200 horsepower, no fairing, no aerodynamic protection, supercharged. Kawasaki stripped the bodywork off the H2 platform and sold it to riders who wanted maximum wind blast alongside maximum power. ZH2 SE, Olin suspension, Brembo brakes, same supercharged engine. Better equipped to handle the power, still 200 horsepower with nothing between the rider and the air. Supercharged, Ninja H2, the first supercharged road-legal Ninja. 228 horsepower from a centrifugal supercharger built by Kawasaki's aerospace division. The tyres it ships with are not rated for the speeds the engine can reach. Ninja H2 Carbon. Carbon fibre bodywork, forged aluminium wheels, same engine. Faster to change direction, the same question asked of the rider at higher speed. Ninja H2 SX, the sport touring version. A supercharged engine, panniers, and a seat comfortable enough for long distances. Kawasaki built a machine capable of crossing continents at speeds that are illegal in every country it passes through. Ninja H2 SX SE. every electronic aid available. Every aid exists because the engine, without intervention, will exceed what the road, the rider, and the tyres can manage. Ninja H2R, track only, 326 horsepower, no mirrors, no headlight, no license plate bracket, a ram air system that increases power as speed rises. At 250 km per hour, it makes more power than it does standing still. The fastest production motorcycle ever built. Kawasaki sells it to anyone with the money and a track to ride it on.